Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So what I'm going to do, I wanted to talk about the licensing model because I do understand, right? I mean, Salesforce sells different products, right? But I mean, as an architect or as a consultant, it's very important that you guys should give importance to the licensing model because you cannot really recommend a product, right, without really talking about the licensing aspect of it. Now, for the community cloud, right? You must be asking, do you need a license, right? You might have heard about the terms like community license, right? Let me write it down here. Uh, and you might have often wondered, if you're not aware, what's the difference between a community license and Salesforce other licenses we have, right? So community license, right? Think about like a standalone Salesforce internal license. It works like that. It Think about that, right? It's not exactly um, it's not an internal license, but it works like a standalone internal license. It's mostly meant for external users. So if you want to give access to your Salesforce site, right? So for instance, you might have Experience Cloud site, and you wanted to give access to the specific site. You can't obviously. I mean, it's not recommended to use internal license. So you normally use external license, right, for the external user. So you use community license. So the external user with the member-based license, um, which is like a license that is assigned to a specific user in simple terms, they can access a community as many as time they want, right? The only thing you have to remember that when we talk about external user, right, they don't have access to your internal org. Okay, so just remember that. Okay, now, uh, sorry, not external org, external user. Now, that's great, right? Now, the main question, right? Obviously, you wanted to expose your portal uh, to the user. Now, to do that, you might need to create Experience Cloud, all right? So now you must be wondering, do you need a license first of all to create Experience Cloud site? Okay, that's great. I mean, I do understand that the user, if they wanted to access, right, they need to have a license. But what about for creating, right? So if you are using enterprise performance and unlimited org, right, you can create up to 100 Experience Cloud um, site. So this is for, you can say enterprise. I'll just E, P, right, and U, right, enterprise performance and unlimited org. And you can create up to 100 Experience Cloud site without buying community license. Okay, so that's cool. Um, but you need to understand one thing, right? If you wanted to use specific templates and functionality, say for instance, if you wanted to use um, Partner Central template, right? You need to buy at least one partner community license, right? Or another example is that if you wanted to use, say, archive site functionality, right? Then you need to buy at least one um, active community license. So remember that. You can have, like I said, I mean, you can have, you can create 100 Experience Cloud site. So you can have up to 100 Experience Cloud site in your Salesforce org. Um, so what that means is that could be active, it could be inactive, or preview site, right? Um, All right. Now that's great. Now, another question that's commonly get asked, right, uh, about the access to the Experience Cloud side. Like, it's right that we spoke about external users who wants to get access to the um, Experience Cloud side, but there are two kinds of access which you should know. One is the authenticated, and another one is the uh, unauthenticated. Let me write it down. This is important, not only from a consultant perspective, but from an exam point of view. You might get asked, right? And to me, if you ask my personal opinion, I believe it doesn't matter you're an architect, developer, or a consultant, right? You should have some fairly decent understanding around the licensing model before you recommend any product to a customer. I think I spelled it right. Okay, so there are two kinds of user, as I mentioned, authenticated and so there are two kinds. Sorry, not two kinds of user. There are two types of access, right, to the Experience Cloud site. One is authenticated, another one is the unauthenticated, right? Authenticated user, as you know, right, they're the user log into the site. They will have access to the Salesforce objects based on the access. The unauthenticated users are usually your guest user, right? So they don't need community license at all, uh, but they can't do much stuff, right? They can only do some access to your site, like login page or error page, etc. Right? Um, so yeah, and like I said, right, you should not be using internal license for external use case. Um, because external user license, right? They're only license which is suited to securely access and client-facing portal that's or a site. Now, sometimes you might also get asked, right, um, that whether community license is limited to a site or is it limited to user. So the community license in general, right? They are often associated with the user. They're not associated with the site. Um, if you need you can move the user with this license between the sites, and user with community license can access multiple sites, right? It just think about like in your Salesforce org, right? You are given a license, right, to do certain things. So that's a similar concept that's applied here. There's one important thing to know, right? There is a concept called the channel license, which you may or may not heard. It's not very commonly used if you're doing, you know, building the portal uh, for, just for exposing the user. So the channel license, they're optimized for use with partners, right? Um, and it can give, and it will give you the power to buy a specific number of license for a partner account. So your partner account with an assigned license is given up to 40 partner user, right? So that's one of the things you have to keep in consideration. Um, then there's another license which is important. That is the login-based license, which is most commonly used. Um, so each community license can be either member-based license or login-based license, right? Now, login-based license is interesting, right? Because to use a login-based license, you first need to buy a specific number of logins to be used every month, right? So this is mostly for external user. Now, if an external user is associated with this license, right, um, consumes one login each time they log in to a site. But that being said, right, the logging in for the multiple times during the day will still be considered as one login once you're logged in, right? So that's one of the thing you have to remember. And the ratio between the number of monthly logins you buy and the number of login license that are provided to your org is like 1 is to 20. Okay, so this is the ratio you have, the 1 is to 20. So for instance, if you buy, say, 10,000 license, sorry, 1,000 monthly login, you are entitled up to 12,000 annual uh, login. Sorry, no. Sorry, my bad. I did wrong calculation. So if you are buying, say, 1,000 monthly login, right, then you will be granted 20,000 login licenses um, in your org, right? So if you wanted to assign more than that, you need to buy extra logins. That's pretty simple. Now, one more question that often get asked, right? Do you experience cloud side has user or role limits? Pretty interesting question, right? And it makes sense too to ask this question. Well, for the standard external, experience cloud, right? Um, so there are following license type, which actually determines the number of users per org. For instance, if you're using customer community, right, you will get 100 um, million and above users per org. But if you're using, say, partner community or channel account or customer community plus, you will get 1 million plus, right? So just remember those. And you don't really have to worry about the pricing because, in general, from an exam point of view, you can refer the Salesforce documentation because they changes, right? Because you might be watching this video maybe say 2024, the pricing model might change, right? So just remember that, right? It's not important to know the exact price from a certification point of view. That just don't have to worry. Okay, another question often people ask, right? Say for instance, if your org has a legacy portal license, right, for authenticated user, then do you have to change it to community license? Not at all. I mean, you don't have to buy or convert to community license for your authenticated user. You can use your legacy portal license for the site created with Experience Cloud. Now, I think this information is important, right? Because think about this scenario, right? You're having a conversation with your customer and you recommend your customer, hey, I'm going to recommend a experience. You're an architect, Salesforce architect, or a Salesforce consultant. You're recommending customer to use Experience Cloud, right? The first thing they will ask you about the licensing model. Do we need the licensing model? Can I use internally use a license, right? So I have like 50,000 users who want to use it. What kind of license I can use? So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this topic. It's important, even though maybe you might get one or two questions from an exam point of view. But from a real life scenario and your from your implementation point of view, I believe that knowing about the licensing model is very important. So that's pretty much I wanted to talk about in this episode. Thank you very much.